Today on Would You Believe It? Discover the hidden underground realm of a visionary gardener. Hear the tragic story of a doomed surfer. Travel to the collection of strange stone creatures living high on a mountain pass. See the awesome power of the Teton Dam break. Visit the strange, the bizarre, and the unexpected on Would You Believe It? Some California cities are known for their architectural and engineering feats. It seems that the visitor is invited to look skyward to appreciate the architectural advancement of humanity. In Fresno, however, to visit one of California's most singular works of architecture, it is necessary to descend below ground to the unique subterranean world of Baldassare Forestieri, now known as the Forestieri Underground Gardens. Forestieri was born in Sicily, but at the age of 21 left to seek his fortune in the New World. From what is known of his early life, it seems that he headed underground as soon as he made land, working on the New York subway, digging his way to New Jersey. Finally, however, he left New York and headed out west to buy his part of the American dream. He had bought a parcel of land in California and dreamed of planting a vineyard. However, when he finally saw his land, he realized he'd been sold 70 acres of useless desert. Underneath a thin layer of soil, the ground was solid hardpan, a concrete-like substance incapable of supporting life. To escape the searing 110-degree summer heat, Forestieri dug himself a cellar. Using only hand tools and a wheelbarrow, he spent 40 years digging and creating in a manner described by architect Bernard Rudolfsky as architecture by subtraction. The soil wouldn't provide enough strength for walls, so instead of doorways, the underground realm has tunnels. Each one seems to open up a surprising new vista, so that the effect of this underground world is not claustrophobic, but spacious and full of light. Long before air conditioning, Forestieri used natural currents of air and theories of thermodynamics to move cool air about his home. Narrow tunnels speed up the flow, and bell-shaped rooms let out the warm air while keeping cooler air below. And down below was where he was happiest. He realized that this was the place to be. Conditions were cooler, and the soil was perfect for planting. He tried an experiment, planting a fruit tree here below ground, allowing the tree to grow up through a skylight. The experiment was a success with a number of bonuses. Frost doesn't penetrate this far underground, so the fruit had a longer growing season, and when it came time to harvest, no ladders were required. Up on the surface, Forestieri could stroll among his growing orchard and reap the fruits of his labor at ground level. From the entrance onward, it is clear that Forestieri was a skilled horticulturalist, as well as an architecturally minded artist. This beautiful walk is cloistered by vines and fruits. Lemons, pears, and pomegranates form the walls of this arcade, a beautiful entrance and introduction to the peaceful and lush retreat that was Forestieri's home. Further evidence of his green thumb is provided by this tree, which bears 7 different citrus fruits. Grafted onto the same trunk, lemons grow alongside oranges and grapefruit. The underground gardens was created as more than subterranean orchard space. This was Forestieri's home, too. It may be underground, but this is still a room with a view. In the days before home security systems, Forestieri designed spy holes so he could be alerted to unannounced guests. In the living room, the other end of the spy hole was hidden in here, the fireplace, ensuring that nobody would discover his secret. Deep below the ground, these rooms are flooded with light, and arches create vistas of distant gardens. It is difficult to be far from the greenery that defined Forestieri's architecture. Spaces are separate but not distinct, each borrowing views and color from other areas. Inventiveness is carried beyond mere architecture. Space should not be wasted but used. This kitchen table slides out when needed, creating the perfect place to sit and enjoy a cup of coffee. Hot water was never in short supply, heated by the sun and then fed down to this ingenious open-air bathroom. Forestieri's most inventive room was not only underground, but underwater. Protected by glass from the water above, he could sit below and watch his fish swim above him. The underground gardens frequently open out onto underground atriums, cool areas of greenery where even the roof is alive with fruit. When visited by a reporter from the Fresno Bee in 1923, Forestieri described the full extent of his dream, a subterranean resort, complete with hotel rooms, restaurant, and underground parking. The first part of the project was this 2,000-foot-long car tunnel, complete with side tunnels for pedestrians. Forestieri died in 1946, but his life's work continues to delight, and his underground gardens have been recognized as an important part of America's history. Though he left no words to guide our understanding of his achievement, the words of Frank Lloyd Wright are brought to mind. Buildings should speak for themselves. No image represents California more perfectly than the surfer, effortlessly riding the glittering ocean waves. For those who master this art and become one with the sea, surfing becomes a passion. Life itself revolves around the waves. Santa Cruz is so steeped in surfing lore that it even has a surfer's museum, filled with memories of famous surfers from Santa Cruz and around the world. Yet visitors to this museum will find a far more bizarre exhibit. Here in Santa Cruz, California, the Grim Reaper is well known to these expert surfers. Watching over them, reminding them constantly of the dangers of their sport, is a grave, the final resting place of one of their own, a surfer. For this is more than just a museum. It is a tomb, the last resting place of Mark Abbott. It was a cold but sunny February morning in 1965 when 18-year-old Mark Abbott grabbed his board and said goodbye to his mother. "Goodbye, Mom. I'm off to the hooting waves," he said. They were to be his last words. Little did Mark know as he paddled out into the ocean, planning to spend only a few hours amongst the waves, that destiny had a different plan. Mark challenged the sea and lost. Now he is buried here in the Surfers Museum, built by Mark's family as a timeless memorial to their lost son. The building where Mark is buried is more than just a museum, however. It is a fitting tribute to the boy who was lost at sea, a lighthouse. Now ships navigating the treacherous coastline are given vital help on their way by the grave of an 18-year-old surfer. Would you believe it? This is the story of some of California's strangest inhabitants. They can only be found in one unique habitat, high on a mountain pass between San Diego and the Imperial Valley. At this rarefied altitude, where desert rock meets blue sky, a collection of strange stone creatures can be found. Once, these timid animals lived undisturbed in an environment utterly inhospitable to human visitors. The journey from San Diego across the mountains took many weeks and was fraught with danger. But with the completion of a paved highway in the 1920s, this remote landscape was opened up to visitors. One of the first to recognize the beauty of this place was Bert Vaughn, who built this tower as a waypoint on the road and a monument to the pioneers. Even with the new highway, the construction of the tower was no simple matter. Water had to be carried in when natural springs ran dry. And the tower had to be constructed with enough strength to withstand howling winds rushing through the mountain pass and the extreme heat of the summer when temperatures can reach 120 degrees. The tower was a success from the day it was completed. With its views of the Imperial Valley, from its position up in the clouds, it quickly became more than just a waypoint. It had become a destination. It was after the tower was built that the strange stone creatures were first observed. They were seen by a traveling artist who perceived their shapes in natural rock formations surrounding the desert tower. With the help of a chisel and mallet, he released the creatures from the rocks, and now they are free to bask in the sun. Guarding the entrance to this grotto of unusual inhabitants is this lizard, perched on the very rock from which it evolved. It shares this shady corridor with a number of strange beasts. Art experts and zoologists differ in their opinions as to the precise genus of this guardian of the stones. Higher up the mountain, a more fearsome collection of residents can be found. This skull glares out at the desert sun, defying the elements to erode it, safe in the knowledge that thousands of years will pass before it once again sinks back into the anonymity of being just another boulder on the hillside. For now, this timeless monument to an unknown artist is very much at home on this mountain pass. And until the owners of the tower hear any different, they will continue to proudly show visitors around their collection of what are surely California's strangest, if not heaviest, works of art. Would you believe it?
All right, I'm going to interrupt right here and put Don Ellis in the KRXK mobile unit on.
All right, thank you very much, Lee Savage. We do have a very, very serious problem here at the Teton Dam. And the water is monumental. Holy great. What can I say? People downstream better get out. People downstream better get out.
Idaho, the Snake River Plain, a 50-mile wide volcanic depression fed by snowmelt waters from Wyoming's Big Hole Mountains and the Teton Range to the east. Hundreds of miles of some of America's most fertile agricultural land, also some of its most demanding. Frozen in winter months, then flooded, baked dry in summer. In 1968, a solution to this year-round problem was put forward by government engineers: a dam. Despite great opposition, construction on the $55 million Teton Dam began in 1972. The diverse landscape provided 5 million cubic yards of silt, sand, and gravel for its construction. By October 1975, the reservoir began to fill. That spring, the winter snowfall, 160% heavier than normal, began to thaw. The farmers waited to see whether the dam would prevent the annual flooding as promised. Although the reservoir filled faster than its design allowed, restrictions were relaxed. By April 1976, the thaw was still pouring millions of gallons of runoff into the reservoir. The 16,000 kilowatt power plant at the foot of the dam was operational. By June, the reservoir was full. The Teton Dam was completed. Just 8 months later, on June 5th, a survey team observed a leak coming from the right abutment.
For anybody that manages dams, earth dams in particular, muddy water issuing forth from your abutment means you have a big problem. It means material is hydraulically piping or sluicing out of the structure. That's a very serious concern, much more serious than the springs that had been noted downstream the week previous, which had issued forth clear water. Dozers were called out by 9 o'clock in the morning. They attempted to go down the face of the dam and infill the enlarging piping hole. By 10:45 a.m., they saw that that process was futile, and they lost the dozers, the operators just getting out with their lives. By 11 o'clock, a vortex had started to form on the upstream side of the dam on the right abutment, and by that time, they knew the dam was going.
The dam broke on a Saturday morning, and we were all just doing Saturday morning things. And the news came over the radio that we better get out of there.
As the lake surged through the dam, the people of Rexburg and Sugar City were directly in its path. The 17-mile-long, 280-foot-deep lake was emptying, and it was headed their way.
The plane didn't even stop. We could see it just going over the top of the Wilford Church, and then we figured it's about 30 feet deep, and it was moving. Horses in the field couldn't outrun it. But I got on the radio and called back to the other commissioner and told him just keep moving people out.
In the low-lying Rexburg Plain, radio stations broadcast the warnings. Many found it difficult to believe the dam had actually broken and simply didn't leave. Only 10 miles away, there was no doubt it had. 100,000 acres of prime agricultural land had already been swamped, and the first life was lost. 2 men fishing in a dinghy near the dam, unaware of the danger, waved at rescue planes, which dived on them, trying to warn them.
Then I looked up the river and seen the wall of water. There was really no time to think then. I was just jump and swim. I got washed down the flood, I guess about 4 miles, and it broke every bone or every rib in my body and collapsed both my lungs.
David Benson, Daryl's friend who was fishing with him, was not so lucky. David's father will never forget that day.
We looked all over up and down the river, and we never could find David, and they found him the next day. Some guys in the boat. We had to go to St. Anthony to No identified body and everything.
As the wave hit Wilford, it was 30 feet high, picking up whatever it could along the way. 5 people who ignored the warning to get out perished.
We're standing right here on the enormous pile of debris that stretches a half mile down this canyon. The canyon's just choked with 40 to 70 feet of debris that came out of this breach. You can see here how enormous this great opening is, where this wall of water came pouring out. In a few minutes, this entire several million cubic yards of material was just washed downstream. That would mean we're looking at a wall of water about 88 billion gallons. And just the sound of it alone could be heard by all the people that were here at the time as just a deafening roar that's almost indescribable. People downstream of floods can also hear. They have this sixth sense to feel and hear a sound that they've never heard before, coming louder and louder and louder and moving toward them.
The 8-foot deep floodwaters spread 6 miles wide. After ravaging the valley, the raging water piled with farm machinery and rocks, headed for Sugar City.
It was a terrible thing. It was a big wall of water, and it was a brown color, and it was coming in on us. We didn't know what to expect.
The flood roared into Rexburg, tearing houses from their foundations, carrying them downstream in a bizarre armada. From the safety of high ground, the locals looked on as their community was ripped apart. The water continued across the plain, animals fleeing ahead of it. Livestock caught in the torrents stood little chance of survival. As the flood continued with no sign of abating, there was fear the water might overwhelm the American Falls Dam, nearly 40 miles away. The dam was going to have to withstand almost a third more water than its usual fill level. Many feared the structure wouldn't endure the extra strain. The sluice gates were opened as the level of this lake began to rise. After many tense hours, engineers declared the American Falls Dam safe. This dam had done its job. Worse hit were the smaller towns, Rexburg and Sugar City on the banks of the Teton River. Sugar City was awash with farm machinery, swept in from surrounding fields. Today, evidence of the flood is still visible all around this neighborhood. 25,000 people were homeless. 32 miles of railroad were torn away. Hundreds of miles of roads were impassable. Many bridges had been smashed beyond repair. 4,000 homes were washed out. But it was the farming population that suffered perhaps the greatest blow. 3,500 farm buildings were destroyed, and almost 20,000 head of cattle and livestock had been killed. The carcasses of thousands of animals were flown to enormous pyres and burned or hastily buried for fear of disease. The water from Teton Dam continued to drain into the valley. By the evening, the water at American Falls had reached its peak. The valley had seen ruination on a tragic scale, with $1 billion worth of damage. And worse, 11 people were dead. For the locals, it was a sobering irony. They'd been told the dam would provide power and prevent flooding. Now their town was in darkness, in 8 feet of water. How could such a new dam possibly fail? While some believed an earthquake had shifted the dam from its foundations, engineers knew they'd find the answer within the dam itself. In an effort to discover the cause of the failure, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation created this cut into the section of the dam which survived the breach. The cut exposed material in the dam's core. What they discovered beneath the left abutment indicated water may have leaked into what are called keyways built at either end of the dam.
The failure is thought to have initiated at this position on the morning of June 5th, 1976, between stations 14 and 15, at an elevation between 5,130 and 5,160 feet. The keyway was a narrow chasm. It was 40 feet deep and 30 feet wide at the bottom.
The volcanic rock of the Teton Valley proved to be extremely porous. Between the rocks, large networks of holes or fissures could run for hundreds of feet.
When you have fissures in close contact with a dam, that's like when you were a kid and you built a dam in the gutter and you pile up all your earth. The fissures are like little pipes going underneath it. You're not going to hold water with those pipes in there. And if those pipes don't have if they're not touching the dam, you'd be okay. So if the piping stays in the rock, you'd be okay. But in the right abutment, they compacted the core of the dam, the earthen material, right up against these open fissures. And there was the problem.
To overcome the fissuring problem, the original design was amended, adding 2 trenches or keyways into the abutments on either side of the dam. They extended the dam into the porous rock, thereby not only damming the water in the reservoir, but also any flowing through the rock at the sides. But the design of these keyways was fatally flawed. Along the line of the right abutment, we can see the top of the cement curtain, a wall of cement grout injected deep into the rock to fill the fissures.
One hole alone took 16,000 bags of grout and over 17,000 bags of sand, which is as much sand and grout as they had budgeted for the entire abutment test program. That was an astronomical amount of grout. That was more grout than they thought the entire curtain was going to take on that side of the dam. So there were precursory warnings that were certainly fired across their bow that said, wow, you better think about this site. You're going to break some records on grout take here if you want to try and build a dam in this kind of material. I'm standing here at the base of the Zone 2 filter, a gigantic subdrain built inside the dam. It was never meant for a human being such as myself to ever see inside the bowels of a dam almost 300 feet below the crest. The purpose of this zone is to save the dam. It's to pick up any water that percolates through the core. This filter served its purpose with the main embankment. The main embankment did not fail. Where the dam failed was over on the right keyway abutment, where it did not have a Zone 2 filter against the country rock that the cutoff trench was built into.
Had the Zone 2 filter layer extended into the keyway, any piping through the rock upstream of the dam would have been safely drained away. As it did not, the superfine loess lay prone to any water leaks and erosion.
The problem on top of that was that they didn't seal all those fissures in with what we call dental work. That's a dam engineering term for going in, jetting this all off, cleaning it off, and then filling everything you see with cement grout so that the earth fill material can't pipe into those open cracks.
Not only was the vulnerable core material laid open for piping erosion, but the dimensions of the keyway now introduced the possibility for a single catastrophic failure.
Because the narrowness of the keyway caused the overburden load of the dam to arch over the keyway. That diminished the vertical load, so the soil was not as confined as the designers thought. When 140 pounds per square inch hydraulic pressure started seeping through these fissures, that was more than the pressure on the silt right where I am sitting. As a consequence, suddenly a fracture forms across the chasm, and now suddenly we have water going from the upstream side of the keyway to the downstream side. And any way you slice it, that spelled doom for the structure.
The dam had cost the Bureau of Reclamation $55 million. Now this empty lake resulted in claims of over $400 million.
Well, the failure of this dam, especially on its initial filling, was just a death knell for dam building and dam engineering in the United States. No large dam structures have been built in the United States since this dam failed.
But while the engineers have learned valuable lessons, the last words are from a survivor.
And it's been tough for my whole family. And for a man made mistake that shouldn't have never happened.
Would you believe it?